Their whirlwind romance was soaring toward incredible heights.
They definitely were in love. You could see it, you could feel it.
They found out that they were having a baby. They were both very excited.
But it all comes crashing down when police discover a bloodbath inside their home.
She had a significant number of stab wounds.
She must have suffered immensely.
It was horrific.
To catch the killer, detectives must unravel a twisted web of deceit and betrayal.
They've got these conflicting stories.
She just grabbed the gun.
He had actually kicked her down the stairs.
But can they determine what's really going on behind closed doors?
The relationship over time was becoming more and more volatile.
The people who can hate you the most are those who are closest to you.
I was just scared, man. I was just scared.
March 23rd, 2014. It's a quiet Sunday in the Dallas suburb of Bedford, Texas.
On the east side, you have Dallas, and on the west side, you have Fort Worth. And in between, you have numerous suburbs, and Bedford is one of those suburbs.
But at 1:30 p.m., Bedford's suburban calm is disrupted when officers descend upon the apartment of 27-year-old Tracy Anderson.
Tracy's mother, Karen Lewis, called the police department and asked for a welfare check on Tracy. The two of them were very close and they communicated quite a bit, but she had not heard from Tracy.
I live in Michigan, and I'm not hearing from her. She's not answering. So I took it upon myself to call the Bedford Police Department.
She was very concerned about her. She had indicated that Tracy Anderson was 37 weeks pregnant.
That's led the police to go to that apartment to check on her.
But as officers approach the apartment door, an alarming sight meets them.
They saw bloody handprints on the wall near the door.
There were signs of a forced entry. The door frame had been broken.
Drawing their weapons, officers cautiously enter the apartment, where they discover more signs of extreme violence.
The bathroom door was ultimately ripped off its hinges and was laying in the living room.
As they looked past the door into the bathroom, they could see the floor was caked in blood.
There's a blood trail from the bathroom leading to the bedroom where it looks like someone had crawled.
A suspicion that's confirmed once officers follow the trail into the bedroom.
They've got a horrific scene.
At the foot of the bed, there was an African-American woman who was very pregnant.
There was a large amount of cut and stab wounds throughout her body.
She's 1091.
They knew immediately that she was dead.
Charge 7. Get 1091 female.
It was just like, oh, really? I can't believe this. How could someone have done this?
Detroit, Michigan native Tracy Lewis always stood up for herself and for the people that she loved.
If someone tried to hurt her in any way or hurt her family, she was definitely gonna stick up for us.
It was a lesson she learned firsthand from her mother.
Her mother was the victim of domestic violence.
I divorced their father when they were 4 and 7.
She chose to be strong and raise us to be strong, independent Black women, to know how to stand up for ourselves in any situation.
I always explained to them growing up, you have to be able to know how to take care of yourself.
Tracy took her mother's lessons to heart. She was an excellent student in high school, and after graduating, she went on to earn an accounting degree.
She was just a super whiz. Math was her thing.
She was always pursuing something better. Where can I grow at? Where can I advance?
Which in 2011 led Tracy to pack her bags and make a life-changing move to Fort Worth, Texas.
She loved Detroit, but I think there was better opportunities here in Texas for her.
Tracy was the type when she sees something, she wants it. You know, like, I'm gonna go get it.
Sure enough, Tracy found a job in Texas at Christus Health.
She has this career going for her. It was almost like she felt unstoppable.
Not only was Tracy conquering the professional world, her personal life was thriving too. In the summer of 2011, not long after landing in Fort Worth, she met a handsome 24-year-old named Thomas Anderson.
He just seemed like a really nice guy. They seemed like they instantly connect.
The connection between them was so intense that the couple wasted no time taking their relationship to the next level.
They definitely were in love.
They went and got married. Yes.
The marriage was great in the beginning.
But the passion between Tracy and Thomas was so red hot, it soon burned itself out.
A few months down the road, there were some issues.
I said, you all married each other too fast. You didn't know each other 2 or 3 months, I think, and they were married. And the marriage only lasts like a year.
However, Tracy quickly bounced back from the breakup.
She socialized with a lot of different people. It didn't matter who you are. She didn't meet a stranger.
She was living her best life, and she enjoyed it. And then all of a sudden, I hear about this new guy she's dating.
His name was Robert Atlas.
He was handsome dude, well-built, good-looking.
They met on a dating website in the spring of 2013.
Let's start basically communicating electronically, through text, through pictures.
Robert was originally from Chicago, and like Tracy, had moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to further his career.
He was a shipping and receiving manager at a sporting goods store.
He was also going to school, trying to pursue a business degree.
They had a lot in common. They were in a similar place in their life. And so it made it easy for them to pursue their relationship.
The way that she talked about him and how she would smile, and Robert this and Robert that, she really loved him.
He was crazy about her. He would post pictures online of sporting events, games, and stuff that they were going to.
They moved very quickly.
He moved all his stuff into the apartment that they had gotten together.
And in the fall of 2013, only a few months into their whirlwind romance, the couple got some unexpected but exciting news.
She called me to tell me she was pregnant.
They were both so happy. He was just as excited as she was.
He was very excited about being a dad for the first time.
She and Robert had pregnancy pictures taken, and they were beautiful pictures of her as like a silhouette, showing the silhouette of her tummy, and Robert touching her belly. It was just really pretty.
I know she was ready to be a mom.
But in March of 2014, just weeks away from her due date, the lives of Tracy and her unborn daughter have come to a horrifying end.
This was an extremely brutal crime, extremely bloody. A large amount of blood throughout the room, throughout her body.
But when homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they'll quickly discover there's a missing piece to this puzzle.
They are able to determine that this is an apartment that she shared with a quote-unquote roommate by the name of Robert Atlas.
He was gone, he was nowhere to be found.
It was clear to them that they needed to find him and find out what he knew about what happened to Tracy.
In the spring of 2014, 27-year-old Tracy Anderson was just weeks away from motherhood.
Tracy just loved her little girl. She was very excited about her baby being born.
But the happy day would never come. Because on March 23, 2014, police in Bedford, Texas find Tracy dead on the floor of her apartment, the apparent victim of a brutal homicide.
You could see that she had a significant number of stab wounds, and her body was covered in blood.
She's 1091. Charlie 7. Get 1091 female. Stop major crimes, criminalistics. Make notification.
The wounds were devastating. There were a lot of them, and the loss of blood was tremendous.
Although it was obvious to detectives that Tracy had fought to the very end.
She had a ton of defensive wounds to her hands. Injuries to the hand that indicate a person is attempting to save themselves.
Based on where police found her body, Tracy'd struggled even after the killer left her for dead.
There was a cell phone laying right next to Tracy's body. It was covered in blood.
She was trying to crawl to get to her phone, and apparently she passed out before she could call 911.
When homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they're met by the complex manager, who informs them that one of the apartment's tenants is missing.
Robert Atlas's name was on the lease.
The complex manager also tells detectives that Robert had only moved into the apartment a few weeks earlier.
Detectives questioned, was he a possible suspect, potentially another victim? At this point, they just don't know.
Any information about a vehicle?
According to the manager, Robert and Tracy both owned vehicles. But after searching the complex parking lot, Tracy's is the only one detectives can account for.
His car was missing.
Detectives immediately issue an APB on Robert's car.
They were able to obtain information about the VIN number and the description of the vehicle. So they began looking for that vehicle.
Next, detectives head into the apartment, where they quickly determined the deadly assault on Tracy began in the bathroom.
There was a tremendous amount of blood on the floor, on the walls.
It was very apparent that there was a struggle that had occurred in there, and it had gone on for quite some time.
It was obvious from the get-go that she was perhaps getting ready to bathe or something of that nature when the crime occurred.
What's less certain is whether Tracy was ambushed by her attacker or if she fled to the bathroom in a desperate attempt to escape.
The entire bathroom door had been ripped off the hinges, and in the center of the door, there was what appeared to be a foot mark.
It looked like someone had kicked that door in with the force of their foot.
They recorded everything with photographs so that it ultimately could be compared if they were able to obtain any shoes.
Nearby, investigators also find what appears to be the murder weapon.
There was a knife there on the floor, on the carpet.
They also compared it to a block in the kitchen that contained knives and determined that it was one of a set that came right there from the apartment.
Outside the apartment, CSIs collect samples from the bloody handprint found near the front door.
With those amount of stab wounds and with the perpetrator using that amount of force, expected that the knife would become bloody, become slippery, your hands would slip, and cuts would almost be expected.
The attack on Tracy appears to be no exception. A quick search outside the apartment reveals a faint blood trail leading away from her door.
There was some evidence of blood, little drops or little touches of blood down that handrail to the stairwell.
Detectives follow the trail of blood all the way to the parking lot.
They see that blood trail lead downstairs and then just stop.
Which leads detectives to believe that the killer could have actually gotten in the car and driven away.
But where had Tracy's killer gone? And what could have motivated such a violent attack?
I think that was very apparent to the officers when they arrived on scene. This is not just a random crime. There was no sign that anything had been stolen from inside the home.
Based on the evidence, detectives believe they're looking at a classic crime of passion.
There's a closeness involved with the stabbing.
You are plunging a knife into someone over and over again until you see the life draining from their eyes.
That in itself bespeaks of an intimate relationship.
So detectives' next step is clear. Find Robert Atlas. With the APB on Robert still coming up empty, detectives request a warrant for his bank and credit card records.
Credit card and ATM activity could be another way to locate him.
They also had his telephone number from the manager of the apartment.
But that's where detectives run into a dead end.
His cell phone was turned off, and I don't think that they're ready to dive in quite yet on whether or not it was suspicious, because there's a number of reasons why a person's cell phone may be off. So locating him was essential to start developing theories.
While trying to track down Robert, authorities also tackled the grim task of notifying the victim's family.
I got a call. I saw it was a Texas call. I answered it. They asked me, "Is this Karen Lewis?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Are you at home sitting down?" I said, "What's going on?" And he said he was the chaplain of the Bedford Police Department. He said she had been murdered. I lost it. I just went hysterical.
As soon as she's off the phone with the police chaplain, Tracy's mother calls Tracy's sister with the news.
My mother was screaming and crying so loud, so I kept saying, "Hello, hello, hello." And I just dropped the phone, and I screamed, and I blacked out for a minute. It was the worst day of my life.
As Tracy's family back in Detroit struggles to process the news, detectives reach out to her friends and coworkers in Texas.
Nobody could think of anyone who would want to harm Tracy.
She was very bubbly. She liked to laugh and joke around and smile. She was a really sweet girl.
When detectives mention Robert Atlas, Tracy's coworkers only have nice things to say about him.
When she found out she was pregnant, she was just elated. And Robert was really happy. I mean, they were both super excited about it.
But according to Tracy's friends, there was someone who might not be so excited about Tracy's pregnancy. Her ex-husband, Thomas Anderson.
They mentioned how surprising it was that she got pregnant so soon after her separation from her husband.
Though it's the details surrounding the breakup that really send up a red flag.
He didn't know she was leaving him. He came home and she was gone. She got her an apartment on her own.
He was brokenhearted over that, the fact that she left.
But things between Tracy and Thomas weren't exactly over.
February 2013 is when he filed for the divorce, but it never got finalized because she never signed the papers.
Tracy's pending divorce, coupled with her ex-husband's broken heart, has detectives wondering if Thomas Anderson is the one behind the deadly attack on Tracy.
When a wife dies, look at the husband. See if there's anything he has to gain. See if there are any bones to unearth.
Detectives in Bedford, Texas are investigating the murder of Tracy Anderson and her unborn child.
Learning how brutal her murder was, it was pretty shocking.
But it's only when detectives receive the autopsy report that they get a full picture of the horrors Tracy endured.
She had 36 stab and cut wounds that they individually documented.
Those wounds were very deep. Some of them went 5 inches, maybe deeper into her body.
It was not any one stab wound that ended her life. It was a combination of all of them. Blood loss was huge as a result of those injuries. You could see that just by looking at the bathroom. There was an incredible amount of blood in that bathroom.
Essentially, Tracy bled to death.
Although for detectives, cause of death isn't the most important thing the autopsy reveals.
A lot of the wounds were congregated toward her abdomen.
One of the stab wounds itself went inside of her and actually stabbed the baby.
Detectives believe the wounds to the baby are no coincidence.
It seemed like not only an attack on the mother, but the child too.
What those final moments must have been like, when her lifeblood was flowing from her, and she knew she wasn't gonna survive. She couldn't call 911. She couldn't do anything to save herself. She couldn't do anything to save her baby. And I can only imagine what that must have been like for her. She was a human being. She didn't deserve this.
But who would want to harm both mother and child? With the baby's father, 26-year-old Robert Atlas, still missing, Tracy's friends have led detectives to another potential person of interest, her soon-to-be ex-husband, Thomas Anderson.
The first step that you do in a situation such as this is to reach out to the husband and find out what's going on.
So that night, detectives put a call out to Thomas Anderson.
Sometimes the people who can hate you the most are those who are closest to you.
I understand that you were in the process of getting a divorce.
Yeah. She had to sign all the papers, though.
They're actually not divorced, so they're actually still married.
But despite their pending divorce, Thomas is adamant he would never hurt Tracy.
He was thrown off guard at the fact that she just up and left because he wanted to stay married, but he truly loved and cared about Tracy.
He's just a joy and a hard-working young man. I thought that marriage would have worked, but they just did it too fast.
Detectives are quickly able to confirm that Thomas has an airtight alibi and wasn't anywhere near Tracy's apartment at the time of the crime.
There's no way that he did this crime.
With no other leads, they redouble their efforts to locate Tracy's missing boyfriend, Robert Atlas.
The police did attempt to communicate through the media with the community to make an effort to try and locate Robert Atlas.
They reached out to his family members to see if they could track him down.
Including Robert's sister, Zanetta Atlas.
I had last spoken to my brother on March 21st.
He called to tell me that they had found a daycare for the baby. I haven't heard from him since.
They had no information as to where he was.
According to Robert's sister, the family has feared for his safety ever since they heard the news about Tracy.
We didn't know at that point, did someone break in the house, try to rob them? Was there a third party? We didn't know what to think. And so we all just started to try to get a hold of him.
Furthermore, Zanetta can't imagine her brother wanting to harm Tracy or their unborn daughter.
He often called and talk to us about her progress. He would sometimes go to the doctor's appointment and he would say, I can't believe that there is an actual baby growing in her stomach. And he would just be so excited. He was so into the process. And so this was just another stage of his life where we just saw him beginning to blossom.
Robert wanted this child, and he wouldn't have had anything to do with this type of incident or anything to do to hurt Tracy.
But Zanetta admits things weren't completely perfect between her brother and Tracy.
Can you tell me if there was any problems in the relationship?
Well, there was this one lady named Lana Duncan.
He was having an affair with a coworker.
They became friends over time. I think that they had just developed into a physical relationship.
According to Zanetta, Tracy found out about Robert's infidelity shortly before they moved in together.
Tracy actually showed up at Robert's apartment and tried to get into the apartment.
And he opened the door soaking wet with a towel wrapped around him. This young lady was sitting on the sofa.
What the hell is going on? Who is she? Liar!
Tracy went after this young lady. Robert held Tracy back as the young lady escaped out the door. Tracy then told Robert, we're gonna settle this right now.
Tracy wasn't going to just allow Robert to just do anything that he wanted to her. She was going to stand her ground.
Zanetta says that despite Tracy's anger, she and Robert ultimately reconciled.
Tracy, I guess, thought she could reform him and change him.
She loved him and she only wanted to be with him, but she wasn't going to tolerate him cheating on her with other women.
He kind of assured me, don't worry about it. I'll try to calm down with the other women and make things work out.
But if Robert had in fact called things off with Lana Duncan, it raises a disturbing new possibility for detectives.
There might be a jealous woman somewhere.
And when detectives dig deeper, they'll discover some alarming and potentially deadly new secrets about Robert's love life.
I'd like to report an emergency. My girlfriend is attacking me right now.
Let's talk about this.
Barely 24 hours after finding Tracy Anderson stabbed to death, detectives in Bedford, Texas are chasing down a potentially game-changing new lead about her boyfriend, 26-year-old Robert Atlas.
He was involved in a relationship that caused some friction between Tracy and this woman.
That was a possible suspect or suspects that the police might want to look at.
So on March 24th, 2014, detectives visit the sporting goods store where Robert works.
Robert Atlas has not reported to work for a couple of days, which his coworkers say is unusual.
Clues around the office suggests he's not on the run after murdering Tracy and their unborn baby either.
On his desk at work, he had the sonogram picture. This isn't the sign of a guy who says, I don't want this kid. To me, it shows the sign of a guy that is excited about the birth of a child.
But Lana Duncan, the woman Robert was allegedly sleeping with, has shown up to work, and detectives are eager to speak with her.
Miss Duncan, do you know why we're here?
I have no clue.
She was really reticent. Didn't want to be painted in the middle of a murder.
Come on. Your boyfriend goes missing. The mother of his child ends up dead.
Robert is not my boyfriend.
He's not.
She said, we're just friends. We talked to each other, we hung out together, but we weren't intimate.
You do understand what happens if we find out that you're lying to us.
But eventually, she admitted the two of them had had an affair, and it had gone on for quite some time.
Lana also confirms what others had told detectives about the incident at Robert's apartment.
What the hell is going on? Who is she?
Tracy caught them in the apartment, and it ended up being a fight there because of what they were doing.
There was a tussle that occurred between Robert Atlas, this other female, and Tracy.
She went crazy. Robert said he had to call the cops on her.
Was anyone arrested?
I don't know. I didn't stick around.
According to Lana, Robert and Tracy were still fighting when she left the apartment.
Lana says that when she saw Robert at work the next day, he abruptly put an end to their relationship.
He said he couldn't see me anymore.
Did that upset you?
What do you mean?
Where were you this past weekend?
Lana tells detectives that she had been out of town over the weekend.
Back at the station, detectives are able to confirm Lana's alibi.
It checked out, so they were able to cross her off the suspect list.
Detectives are also able to locate Robert's distressed call to police.
He called the police February 1st of 2014 and claimed that Tracy had assaulted him.
She was just pushing me and pushing me, and then I tried to grab her arms to restrain her, and she just kept pushing me and hitting me and punching me.
According to Robert's 911 call, Tracy's assault on him hadn't stopped there.
She just grabbed the gun.
Robert indicated that Tracy had pulled, I think it was a .45, a handgun.
I had to get the gun out of her hand.
Okay. Where's the gun now?
The gun is in the room with me, and I have the door locked, and she's out there.
Okay. You make sure that there's a door between the two of you.
However, when detectives review the incident report, they find that Tracy had given the responding officers a very different story.
What she was saying wasn't consistent with what he reported was happening.
Tracy claimed that Robert had attacked her.
So the police can't make a definitive decision as to who the aggressor is.
Nearly 2 months later, the detectives investigating Tracy's murder are just as stumped. However, the incident with Lana does make one thing crystal clear.
It's certainly indicative of a very troubled and violent relationship.
Hoping for greater understanding, detectives follow up with more of Tracy's friends, including a woman named Keandra Warner.
When they started their relationship, what did she tell you about him?
That he was cool, he was nice, basic stuff, he was cute. She said he had his stuff together, he was working, he had his own apartment.
Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that threw up a flag or anything like that?
No, not when they first met.
They had a good relationship in the beginning.
But according to Keandra, the warning signs soon appeared.
It was one time she had fell down, well, she told us she fell down the stairs and she broke her collarbone.
Keandra says a few days later, Tracy came clean about the true nature of her injuries.
She was like, I know I didn't tell you, but when I told you I fell down the stairs and broke my collarbone, it was because Robert jumped on me because he had been drinking.
He was being assaultive and emotionally and physically abusive to her.
But Keandra's insight into Tracy and Robert's relationship isn't the only valuable information she has for detectives.
Turns out she may have been one of the last people to see Tracy alive.
On March 21st, that night, Tracy had been out with her girlfriends at a restaurant.
We went to Dallas, and we stayed at the restaurant and kicked it and ate and all that stuff and danced, and then we left.
What time was that when you left?
Maybe midnight.
According to Keandra, when the night was over, Tracy didn't go home. Instead, she went out looking for Robert.
She had an app on her phone where she could see where people were located. It's like a Find Your Friend app. And she determined that he was at a bar over in Fort Worth. So she went to the bar.
But when Tracy arrived, she found Robert leaving the bar with another woman.
They had an argument there in the parking lot, and she left and went home.
And she texted me at like 1:25 and said, made it home.
She was able to text her friend and tell her when she got to the apartment, so we had an approximate timeline.
Tracy had indicated that she wasn't going to let Robert back in the house that night.
She was angry, and she was upset with him because he was out with another woman.
Tracy supposedly said she was going to lock the door and not let him in, put the deadbolt on.
That was the last I heard from her.
Based on Keandra's story, detectives are able to speculate about what happened next.
They've got 2 points of forcible entry, one at the front door, one at the bathroom door.
But if Robert had come home that night and kicked in the apartment door, where was he now?
When detectives finally receive Robert's bank records, they provide the first clue.
They were able to determine ultimately that his debit card had been used at a gas station, which was located on Beltline in Irving.
The transaction had occurred at 3 o'clock on the morning of Saturday, March 22nd, just hours after Tracy's last text to Keandra.
The detectives immediately go to the convenience store.
They spoke to the clerk, and the clerk remembered the transaction.
But what really interests detectives is why the clerk so clearly recalled Robert Atlas at all.
The clerk remembered that he was bleeding.
It's was less than 48 hours since the brutal slaying of Tracy Anderson, and homicide detectives have zeroed in on a prime suspect, Robert Atlas, the father of Tracy's unborn child.
The convenience store clerk had spotted Robert with a bloody cut on his hand just hours after Tracy was last seen alive.
In that type of murder, it would have been very easy that his hand would have slid up that handle onto the blade itself and give him a cut.
Surveillance video from inside the store confirms that the man with the bloody hand was indeed Robert.
They were able to obtain footage of him actually using his debit card there.
They can see in the surveillance video where he has not been able to wash the blood from his hands.
Detectives determined that after leaving the convenience store, Robert headed east toward the Texas-Arkansas border.
They're tracking him through debit card hits.
He next used his debit card in the city of Texarkana.
Though after Texarkana, the trail goes cold.
All the news reports start going out about looking for Robert Atlas. I mean, it was national news.
The manhunt for him was pretty intensive. They obtained the assistance of the United States Marshal's Office in attempting to locate him.
Robert probably felt the heat and went into hiding.
Several hours pass, and there's still no sign of Robert. That is, until one of his friends from his hometown of Chicago provides police with a critical piece of information.
Bedford Police?
Bedford Police? Yeah, I was wondering about the Robert Atlas case.
Do you have any information?
He had contacted me from a weird Texas number, and basically he was just scared. He was crying.
He'd said he'd spoken to Robert Atlas.
His friend was concerned about his welfare.
He didn't say where he was or anything like that?
He said he was in the city, but I don't know if it was downtown Dallas or if it was downtown Chicago, because it was a weird Texas number that he called me from.
Do you still have that number or no?
I do.
It was a new phone number, the phone number the police didn't have.
The new phone that he got was, I guess, what you would call a burner phone. And it could only be tracked when it was on, when it was actively being used.
That would be a pretty ingenious way to try to give the slip to the police. You know, you don't use your old phone, so you can't be tracked anymore. That was a good way that he could hide himself by having this new phone.
On the evening of March 24th, detectives decide to lay a trap for Robert Atlas.
The police called that phone in an attempt to be able to locate him.
But will Robert be foolish enough to answer?
Hello?
Hello? Robert?
We got it.
Indeed, they were able to ping that phone in the city of Shreveport, Louisiana.
They notify authorities out there. Shreveport Police Department worked in conjunction with the U.S. Marshals.
They're actively searching for him in Shreveport, driving around, trying to see if they can unearth him.
They'd gotten a general idea of where the ping was, and they searched for his car.
In the early hours of March 25th, a Shreveport patrol officer spots Robert's car in a shopping center parking lot and brings him into custody.
He was driving the same car that they were able to connect to him from the information in the apartment.
And they identify him, and he gives up without any fight.
Upon learning that Robert Atlas is now in custody, Bedford detectives make a beeline for Shreveport. Meanwhile, the Shreveport PD begins processing Robert's vehicle.
And they obtained some very interesting evidence out of that, one of which was blood on the steering wheel. They also were able to obtain his clothing from the trunk of the car, which had quite a bit of blood on it.
Shreveport police also find a pair of bloody shoes in the trunk.
His shoes were important because the bottom of those shoes matched the pattern that was found on the door there in the apartment.
Hours later, when Bedford detectives arrive in Shreveport and finally sit down with Robert, they're convinced they've caught Tracy's killer.
We're here to talk to you and give you a chance to talk.
But will he take the bait?
At this point, Robert's already under arrest for murder. They've read him his rights, and all he has to do is remain silent.
Instead, Robert decides to give detectives his side of the story.
The gravity, the finality of the situation set in, and he'd realized what he had done. And just like anyone, he wanted to talk about it.
At first, Robert's account of the night Tracy died matches what her friend Keandra had already told detectives, that Tracy'd gone out with friends. According to Robert, after Tracy left the house, he met up with a male friend at a local bar.
This is a friend of the family, and she had just went out, did the same thing with her girls. And I don't know if she just thought I would be staying at home. I mean, I never told her I'd be staying there or whatever.
But Robert says that when he came home, he discovered Tracy had locked him out.
He did not admit exactly to kicking in the door or in any way forcing it. He indicated he shouldered open the door.
I come in there and I don't say anything to her.
He indicated he went to the bathroom to use the restroom.
But what Robert says next will flip this seemingly closed case on its head.
I open up the door, she's like there with a knife.
And leave everyone questioning what really happened that night in the apartment.
It certainly had the potential to be self-defense.
The detectives wondered, was Robert a cold-blooded killer, or was he in a fight for his life?
It's been 48 hours since police in Bedford, Texas found 27-year-old mother-to-be Tracy Anderson dead on the floor of her apartment. They've identified Tracy's live-in boyfriend, Robert Atlas, as the crime's prime suspect. But during their initial interview, Robert throws a wrench into the investigation.
He said that he is attacked, that Tracy comes after him with a knife.
She swings the knife at me. I just catch the knife, and then now we're like scrummaging around. I'm trying to stop her from doing it. I'm holding the knife, and then she's swinging at me with the other hand. She gets scratched a couple times with the knife. And then I know at some point, like, I stabbed her a couple times. It wasn't anything like me trying to attack her, me trying to rush her, or me trying to do anything to her. I'm just blindsided. I'm caught off guard.
The way the story went is he stabs her in self-defense, and he continues to stab her until he is no longer in fear of his life.
I was just scared, man. I was just scared. This is the honest to God truth. I can't believe this happened.
According to Robert, once he realized what he'd done, he fled in a panic.
Did you think about calling us when you saw that we were looking for you? Or turning yourself in? Yeah, I thought about it. What kept you from doing it? Just knowing that what I'm telling you right now might look like a lie. And looking like I went there with an intention to kill my girlfriend.
Though Robert is adamant he's telling the truth, his version of events doesn't quite dovetail with the physical evidence.
I don't think they buy it for a minute.
The injuries to Tracy Anderson were far worse than he characterized them in his recorded statement.
They know that he's able to overpower a woman without having to stab her 30 times, much less 50 times.
To stab an 8-month pregnant woman with your child to death 17 times in the stomach with intent to harm your own child. How could that possibly be self-defense? You're a sick individual. Sick, enraged, and demented.
That's precisely how the prosecution presents the case to the jury when Robert Atlas stands trial for murder in October of 2015.
He had already admitted he was the person that stabbed them. And of course, they found the bloody clothing and the blood in the interior of the car, so there was physical evidence there as well.
He was fighting for himself against all of this physical evidence that was stacked against him. He was trying to shed some light on the fact that this was a self-defense case.
At least that's what Robert's supporters say. But in their opening statements, prosecutors lay out the evidence they believe proves Robert was the aggressor on the night in question.
When you put together the totality of the relationship, the physical abuse upon Tracy before this, it didn't make sense that this crime would have occurred where she was the aggressor.
One of the things that I thought was very important in terms of establishing that this was not self-defense was the door that was recovered from the scene, the one that had been ripped off its hinges.
That type of force, that kicking in the door, that results from not a man acting in self-defense, but an angry man charging into the bathroom to commit homicidal violence.
To bolster their case, prosecutors present the jury with transcripts of text messages between Robert and Tracy on the night of the murder.
The police discovered Tracy's phone there in the apartment. They were eventually able to get information off of that phone, look at the text message conversations between the two of them.
The text messages from Tracy said, "You better not come in this house, and you won't get in this house."
On this night, she'd caught him in a bar with another woman.
She and Robert had had several fights where she would actually go and actually catch him with other women.
The text itself that she sent Robert telling him he wasn't coming back in the apartment that night was pretty salty in its language. It was very clear from what she texted him that she was angry with him.
But while Tracy was angry, prosecutors claimed that her text had made Robert furious.
I do think that text was a flash fire moment.
He was angry, and he busted that door open, and in a fit of rage, broke the door in to the bathroom.
He was incredibly angry. I think that he was a person who had power and control issues. And I think that finally this was a way of showing her who was really in charge.
I'm sure that she fought back with tooth and nail everything that she had.
And then, once Tracy was dead, Robert went on the run.
He's acting like a fugitive. He's acting like someone who's done something wrong.
Prosecutors also call a witness who can testify about the violence she'd personally suffered at Robert's hands.
And investigators are able to find an old girlfriend who testifies that Robert choked her.
This young woman's testimony gave insight into his previous behavior, the way that he treated women.
Testimony that's backed up by the 911 call, which prosecutors play for the jury.
Pushed my face into the carpet, and when I tried to get up, he then tried to choke me.
Okay, and what is his name?
Robert Atlas.
When it's the defense's turn, they make a bold but risky decision to put Robert on the stand in his own defense.
His story was that they fought there in the bathroom. She had the knife. He got the knife away from her.
That was a mountain to try to explain to a jury how it's possible that someone can act in self-defense against someone that, one, they love, two, is carrying their child.
How can you be in fear of your life when you kicked in the bathroom door to get to her? That's not fearing for your life, that's going after hers.
The jury agrees. On October 16, 2015, they find Robert Atlas guilty of capital murder.
Once the jury makes that decision, the sentence is life without parole.
Robert's supporters are taken aback by the verdict.
We were so disappointed. None of us expected the verdict that we heard.
As for Tracy's family, they believe justice was served. However, it's of little comfort given everything they've lost.
She was a young woman with everything in the world to live for. And she lost it in just a matter of moments.
He did this to my sister. For him to stab her to death, her baby like that. It's not fair. This is not fair. And I hope that Robert Atlas is in jail suffering for the rest of his life.
He took something from me, and I believe God gave him just what he needed. You know, you can't run away from what you did.
Since her daughter's tragic death, Tracy's mother, Karen Lewis, has dealt with her heartbreak by founding a nonprofit devoted to helping victims of domestic violence.
Karen Lewis took this opportunity to help other women. I admire her for that. You know, it would be so easy to become bitter to the point that you were just unable to function, to lose a child in this manner. But to take that and to turn it into a way of helping other people escape that, I admire her greatly for that.
I have a job to do for God, and that is to help every woman I know now get through domestic violence. And I will be an advocate for domestic violence for the rest of my life in honor of my child and my grandchild.
You read stories and you see stories on the TV, but for it to actually be in your backyard is a completely different thing. It makes you go through all these scenarios of what you could have done, or is there something you missed?
If you or anyone you know is going through domestic violence, it's a better life for you. Don't be a statistic.